As it happens, the saint that in the old calendar is honoured on this day, Andrea Corsini, would probably have been of the distant relatives of people of our area who used to help us. They had the biscuits in the area, the Corsini industry, and we used to get them free in our monastery. But the brother of the main one in the biscuit industry was a priest, and a very good priest. He was chaplain of the huge hospital in Siena. He's recently died, I think. But these were therefore people who lived in our area and handed on life and grace. He became a bishop, and I would like to go into something which would have been precious to him, what we are doing now and what gave him hope. The Blessed Sacrament. I'm grateful to one of you for giving me this because it's actually quite touching. It is always important to listen to any nudges of the Spirit and also to look at what the Lord says in providence, because history, as you know, is His story, and He speaks to the concreteness of an event. They are God incidences quite often. And so this came to me and I found quite moving, and I'll just read a few parts of it to show you that it concerns you exactly as you are, especially the little people, because on these first Saturdays we think especially of the little people. Do you know Patricia O'Leary, who was with us on retreat one time, what you call Rudy Patricia? She was kind of keen on having children, praying for children, and so it's important to be aware of that. The children brought up well are privileged, they're not contaminated, and they can also help to save other children. That is part of the Fatima message. You know why? They were the ones who served as our eyes. They were shown the beyond, and therefore they were shown the seriousness of life. Remember now, in 1917, the most terrible battle ever fought, probably the Somme, was sort of over, but there was worse to come in other trenches. But this was the time when, on a massive scale, these souls were going en bloc into the beyond, within a matter of minutes, huge numbers going to meet their God. And she was concerned, and she showed the children her concern by showing them where some of them were going, and she warned them that they could be saved from that if even they, the children, did what she was asking. And she's asking the same thing of us all. She invited them to make all that they did a sacrifice, to offer up therefore what they were doing. That concerns every Christian on this planet. Not just doing well what we do, but making sure it's a sacrifice. That means starting the day with a morning offering and maintaining that offering in our interior intention, and then doing it as service to God, not just therefore an act. Because remember, something that gains merit is the same act, but when it's put in that optic of purity and intention, it gains luster. So that's important. And this offering up of things is redemptive. It saves souls. And she was trying to teach the children that. And also to make sacrifice. Anything they could think of, they were invited to make a sacrifice of. And they were quite ingenious. They became saints in a short time. Actually quite austere. But then she also explicitly asked for prayer, and she gave prayers. We still have them to this day, interspersed with the rosary, and they concern sinners, they concern hell, they concern what we can do to stop people getting there. Now, with regard to specifically what we're doing on these first Saturdays, one part of it was Holy Communion. Now remember, in those days, it wasn't automatic. The Sacred Heart had to come into a situation already in the 1600s to adjust something. People were not going to communion, to the bare minimum, because they were afraid. And still there was a lot of that around, and therefore these first Fridays were actually monthly communions. They weren't just an extra one. They were going, and they were going to confession once a month. That was a big step. And she was extending that then with this parallel one of the first Saturdays, which includes also a moment with her, 15 minutes of meditating on these mysteries. One can take one a month. And then she also, remember, insisted each time at Fatima on these 5 mysteries a day. And if we're too busy to do that, we're just too busy. We're out of order. Now, this business then of trying to honour heaven in the way that heaven asks is important. Because if we think we can do it better, then it's pride coming into it. So this monthly confession and a well-received Holy Communion is the desire of heaven. We want quality encounters with our God to make reparation for the poor quality encounters which out there are massively present. So in this context, also we see heaven discreetly over this planet doing something in our time which is not new, but it's increased. I mean, making reparation specifically there where the Lord is hurt, in adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. And that's where I want to land. This is fairly recent, and it's fairly modern. It's actually typical in the background that it portrays. The child who comes into this story is your age. He's 8 years old, and he is a means by which the Lord is able to get through to the whole family. A holy priest, Patrizio Hilleman, was responsible for building perpetual adoration chapels all throughout Latin America. And he shares this touching testimony. It concerns a certain Diego. Of course, that's a popular name down there. You know why, don't you? Juan Diego? Who was he? He's now saying, yeah? Guadalupe. You got it. Now, Guadalupe is in Mexico, isn't it? So, this poor child had a great faith in the Blessed Sacrament. His family, however, was marked by problems related to domestic violence, alcoholism, poverty, and so on. So, this happened in Mérida, the capital city of Yucatan, part of Mexico. It was in the very first chapel of perpetual adoration that the missionaries of Our Lady of the Blessed Sacrament established in the city. So, the good priest tells this to us. But the little boy had heard him preaching, and this was his message, that those who are willing to be at vigil at dawn, Jesus will bless 100 times more. That is, the choosing the most awkward moments. It has a special merit. And by the way, some of you were with me once or twice in retreat, and we have done that kind of thing at night. And I remember you used to do it as well amongst yourselves. We would farm out the night and have an hour, making sure that the Lord was always accompanied. And you may remember that those night hours were very special. There's no noise, you're looking at Jesus eyeball to eyeball, and he can whisper to your soul. That's why any retreat must be, if it's serious, Eucharistic, and involve adoration, if possible, nocturnal, because that's the moment when things happen. It also obliges people to go to bed and not get into chatting into the hours of the night. It is the thing that gives the Lord's a stage. Because retreats which are not based on that tend to be waffly and based on human dynamics. We need Jesus to do the work as the interior master, and we provide the conditions. So, he had said this also. I would also say that Jesus invites his friends to the holy hour, and that he would also ask them, can you not watch 1 hour with me? So, that's straight from the Gospel. And all our holy hours go back to that, essentially. Remember how, way back, the Lord indicated that to St. Margaret Mary. It came in there the Thursday at night, holy hour, and stayed there ever since. And we know also that the Lord somehow was consoled in his agony in the garden. When the angel came, he was for a moment given some relief when he saw into the future all the holy hours that would be done. So our holy hours in some way go out of time, and we console the Lord because God is outside time. His words made the child decide to start his vigil at 3 in the morning. And by the way, that's the time when Old Nick is honoured. That's when they have these rituals going on, between 3 and 4. Something that naturally caught the attention of his mother, to whom the boy explained that he would do it because I want my dad to stop drinking and that we can no longer be poor. You see how the child is more mature than the man. During the first week, the mother accompanied him. The second week, Diego invited his father. A month later, they began to participate in perpetual adoration, and the father testified that he had experienced the love of Jesus and was healed. Right after that, listen to this, he fell in love with his wife during those holy hours. Now that's the Lord coming into the sacrament of matrimony and making it relive. I think I may have told you before, I was recently celebrating in the mobile home of a travelling family, and that good husband, they'll be fairly young now, when his wife has a bad headache, migraine, lays his hand on her head, and prays in virtue of their marriage, and the Lord immediately heals. It works every time, she said. So, the father stopped drinking and fighting with his wife, and they were able to leave poverty behind. How many families need not be poor? The big one nowadays is gambling. It's not a substance, it's a psychological addiction. It's secret and it's devastating, and also ruins relationships. It leads to hiding and so on. Deception. Because of the faith of an 8-year-old child, a whole family was healed. This is one of several conversion testimonies that, according to the good priest, he's actually from Argentina originally, the priest, often happen in perpetual adoration chapels. So he had founded this community of the missionaries of Our Lady of the Blessed Sacrament, and they set them up everywhere, and wherever they go, they are like a centre of radiation. Healing happens on every level. The first commandment of perpetual adoration is to allow oneself to be embraced by Jesus, said this good founder on his visit to Chile. It is the place where we learn to rest in the heart of Jesus. Now that's something we can all claim. It's the invitation given in a sense to the beloved disciple, extended to us. Place your head here. Now, how it all started is interesting. This good founding priest explained the initiative began in 1993 in Spain, in Seville, when St. John Paul II expressed his desire that every parish in the world could have a chapel of perpetual adoration. By the way, we're best in this area, there are quite a few around, aren't there? Where Jesus could be exposed in the Blessed Sacrament in a custody, solemnly worshipped day and night without interruption. And this good priest also recalled that St. John Paul II spent 6 hours of adoration a day. Now we know that that's not impossible because we had his life read in the community, and he used to do all his preparation of documents for the whole church before the Blessed Sacrament, I think exposed. Therefore, it was his centre of orientation. When, in his 30s, he was told that they wanted to make him a bishop, he said, "That's ridiculous at my age, I'm too young." And they simply said to him, "It's a defect of which you will soon be healed." So they got him to be accepting this unexpected invitation, and they found him, they looked for him the previous night, they couldn't find him anywhere, so they just copped on, well, maybe he's in the chapel, and he was. But wait for it, he was prostrate for hours before the tabernacle on his nose, because he realized the colossal importance of becoming a bishop of the church. So when we see things coming out of John Paul II, when we see Our Lady coming into his life and doing things, there's more to him than meets the eye. I think I've told you before how he came to this Lithuanian nun who was completely riddled with cancer, embraced her warmly, and she felt something. She was immediately healed. So, 6 hours a day of some form of adoration in the life of St. John Paul II. So he wrote these documents while, yes, right, in front of the sacrament exposed, and would spend all night in adoration once a week. That is the secret of the saints. That is the secret of the Church, being centered and united in Christ. One of the people who have had the greatest influence on souls through the media in recent times, when they were just starting to be important, was Fulton Sheen. He also spent an hour of adoration every day. I know several bishops who do the same. They're good bishops. If they, in their busy day, can do it, we can as well. If not physically before the sacrament, somewhere we can give an hour to God, because proportionately it's not that much, and it's what calls us back to base, back to base, back to base. Dominus vobiscum.